Welcome back to the FCS Checkdown. Montana State picked as the favorite in the Big Sky Conference here in 2023, and I'm excited to be joined for the first time by head coach Brent Vigen. Coach, 2023 preseason standings are out. I know coaches don't really put a lot of weight on that, but it's got to be nice to have some expectation for your football club.
Yeah, for sure. You want to be a place that you're expected to do things, and you have the tools, the support to get those those expectations met. And I feel like we have that here, and generally polls are based on, the previous year performance, which we did finish high. And then what you return. And fortunately for us, we do return a lot of good players, and, looking forward to, the season and letting those expectations play out.
You're entering your third season as the head coach. Before we talk about football, though, I just want to kind of pick your brain about, I know you've been exposed to good leadership and bad leadership in the coaching ranks. What do you feel like your leadership philosophy is, and who's been most influential in developing that philosophy?
Well, I'll speak to that piece first. I had a good fortune to work for Craig Bowl for 18 years, both at Wyoming and then before that at North Dakota State. And without a doubt, his influence, runs deep. Just seeing how he came in to our program at NDSU. I was one of a couple coaches retained, and not that he flipped everything upside down, but right. he did make it his own. And we were transitioning at the time, the next year from Division II to 1AA at the time, and just learned a lot through that stretch to the point where our last 3 seasons in Fargo we won national championships. Then going to Wyoming and taking over a program where you're replacing a coach that had been fired. Really wholesale changes need to be made. New state, new dynamics. You're at the FBS level now, dealing with different resources, and so just really trying to pick up on so many things that I was had a front seat to all those years, and then you bring it in your own situation here at Montana State, and really trying to apply all that I had learned from those 2 experiences, which is rare in coaching. I'd only been 2 places before coming here, but had seen, I felt like, quite a bit. So, to your first part of your question, I think you got to really hire good people, hire them and trust them to do their job and let them do their job and give them as much guidance as possible, but really allow them to do what you've tasked them to do. And that's how I felt working for Coach Bowl all those years in a lot of different roles. So I been fortunate here, and now going on year 3. We've had a lot of good coaches. We've had some guys move up. We continue to, hire good people, recruit good people. You're really molding those young men from, age 18 on, and you get a mixed bag of backgrounds, and but really put a focus on character and character development, and give them some marching orders, but by and large let them become themselves.
When you are putting together your staff and you've had to hire a coach, offensive line coach and running back coach this year, what do you look for in some of those interviews? Are there leadership principles that you want to see them bring in, or do you want to look at somebody that you can develop kind of to fit in your program?
Yeah, ideally it's someone I guess, who they are as a person, but that's not always, you don't have that luxury. You only know so many people. So, for me, like in particular, that O-line position, someone that could really teach, someone that could communicate in a relatively concise manner. You're coaching 5 guys at a time. You have maybe up to 18, 19 kids in a room. You want to make sure all those guys feel like they're being communicated with. Yeah. And that's not always telling them what they want to hear, but what they need to hear. And, the hire that we made, Al Johnson, who had come from Wisconsin, but he'd been a head coach, played in the NFL for several years, had a lot of great mentors himself. It was clear to me that his ability to communicate was going to be what we were looking for. And it's played out that way, through these first 6+ months.
Well, let's kind of turn our focus to football. The Bobcats finished 12-2, deep playoff run last year after the national championship appearance the season before. Sean Chambers' role became more prevalent. He became an essential piece of your offense. How did his role change and develop as the season continued? And did you come in knowing you were going to have to use him in such a versatile way?
Well, we brought him in the previous winter to bolster not only our depth at quarterback, but our experience on offense, our playmaking ability on offense, and not knowing exactly what that would mean for the 22 Bobcats. So it was a work in progress. I had a chance. I coached Sean at Wyoming for 3 years, so knew full well who he was as a person and what kind of player he was. Knew he'd be the type of guy who would come from a starting role at the FBS that would accept, a different role at the FCS level.
Right.
So as it started, he was really used, very situationally the first couple games, really through the non-conference. We played 2 quarterbacks a little bit through those first couple games, and then we got to our first conference game, and Tommy Mellott went down. So Sean was our quarterback for a couple. It was probably 3 weeks. Then we got them both back, and we utilized them more, creatively, I guess. And then Sean went down for a couple weeks, so we just had Tommy for 2, maybe it was 2 or 3 games, and then we had them both back for the stretch run. And I think that creativity continued to be part of our plan every week. I think you find out a little bit more how they offset each other as far as their own particular strengths. Maybe as it goes to the run game, Sean's a bigger inside type of runner, still has speed in his own right, but then Tommy's, many times the fastest guy in the field. So he's obviously more of a perimeter guy. They both threw it, well at times. So yeah, there wasn't this perfectly plotted out, hey, this is how this is going to look. I do think going into year 2 with both of them, I think, you have a chance in the off season to massage it a little bit more and, put together a few more schemes that you can have them both together. We collectively, between the two of them, they rushed for like 2,400 yards.
Right.
We really don't want to do that.
Yeah.
That was a product of what we needed last year. So we need them to rush the ball a little less, but just as effectively. And then, both throw the ball better for us to take the steps we need to on offense.
Was there conditions to bring him to Montana State not to talk about the fourth quarter comeback when he was the Wyoming quarterback? And
No, but you know what? The unique part about that, there was certainly some instant credibility with his new teammates.
Yeah.
That he let his team on that victory, a game that we thought we should have had. So yeah, very unique experience. I had coached him. Our guys had played against him. So you don't see that come along too often.
Yeah, no doubt. Tommy Mellott, you mentioned, stormed onto the scene as a freshman. Clearly had to make an adjustment in the offense in 2022. Again, extremely versatile, dual-threat quarterback. What did you see out of his development as a young man, a maturation process of seeing Sean Chambers come in and do so well and then get back on the field? And just about his growth and his maturation last year and what you expect in 2023.
Yeah, very interesting track for him. He played just in the playoffs really at quarterback his freshman year, and I think got out of it and said, I really didn't even know what I was doing. I was just out there, playing ball, running around, making plays, which he made a bunch of them. So he, trying to become more of a complete quarterback was his process leading into last season. And then seeing Sean play so well, Sean was National Player of the Week one of those weeks that Tommy was out, and we had a big win over UC Davis. And I think Tommy's such a humble, and then he's such a humble young man, but then he's such a processor. I'm sure part of him was like, well, why would I go back and play?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you keep playing this guy? But ultimately, we didn't trust him to go back out there, and I think he in his own right had played well up to that point in the season, and then he continued to improve himself. So, I think last year different than his first year. His pre-snap process, his post-snap reaction, I think he really understood what that meant. not having the just take off every time you don't see your first wide receiver open. Working through progressions more, getting out of bounds instead of maybe getting an extra yard, just trying to save some wear and tear. I think there was a lot learned last year, and, really the last couple of games in the playoffs is when he threw the ball the best, and albeit in miserable conditions as far as temperature goes. So he's had a really good offseason. And I think continuing to learn what it means to be a quarterback, it just takes time. It takes experience. Sometimes you have to experience the lows to just understand what that even means. He threw interception against Oregon State. He just didn't handle the free safety well enough. And I kind of told him after that, you're not going to let that happen again. It was just like an oversight, but he had to maybe experience that one time in live action to know what that really even meant. So really excited about both their continued growth, and, excited that we have this unique situation for another season here.
Well, most pundits believe that the passing game has got to improve for Montana State. You brought in 3 transfers from FBS to the wide receiver position. Is it your belief that the passing game has to change over last year, and what will your approach be as the camps open and maybe developing and improving the passing game?
Yeah, I think it does. Volume, is probably a number one. Just throwing the ball more. And there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, there's obviously trusting your quarterbacks, but it's trusting the guys on the other end. Their ability to trust those guys they're throwing to be able to throw the ball, maybe up a little bit more to create some more 50 situations. And then, I think we're in position to protect much better.
Yeah, no doubt.
That gets talked about very little. We didn't throw some just out of necessity not to put those quarterbacks who are already running the ball in harm's way, as far as, being protected behind last year, a relatively inexperienced line. And I think that line got lots of credit for how it was on the run blocking side of things. But at the same time, they were fairly protected on the pass blocking side of things. So, we have the receivers you mentioned. We brought back Cleveland Thomas, who was we thought was maybe going to be a 1-year transfer from Kentucky. He really took off at the tail end. He's coming back actually for his 7th year of college football. Ty McCullough was a really good pickup for us out of Colorado State that gives us some speed that we haven't had. Junior Alexander out of Washington. So those guys, but then I think the guys I would be remiss. I mean, we got to get the ball to our tight ends. I think the combination of Snell and Pickering are as good as anybody has in the country, and we need to find ways to get them the ball more than we did last year.
Yeah.
So just a matter of going out there and continuing the steps we've taken to this point this calendar year.
Yeah, nice to see Snell get mentioned preseason all conference, 6'2", 240. What'd you play at, Coach? Were you tight end?
I was a tight end, probably. I was a little taller than Derek, but about 240. Yeah.
Okay. All right. You were there.
Still 240.
You're in the mix. Well, one thing you bring back is you mentioned the experience on the offensive line. Most teams look at their offensive line going into camps, got a lot of head scratching going on and trying to figure out how to piece it together. You're bringing in a lot of depth and experience. You mentioned the hire of Al Johnson. Just talk about what that offensive line is and the experience you bring back and the depth and the confidence that you're going to have in this team, this unit that's coming back.
Yeah, rare that you return everybody that played your meaningful downs. And we do that actually on both sides of the football, offense and defensive line. So you have experience that we really didn't have going into last year. You have that accumulated experience. You have competition, and I think any good line that I've been around, there's another guy you can plug in if one guy's not getting it done. That really goes for all positions. But we have more position flexibility, so that allows us to, really truly put the best 5 out there. So in addition to the 7 that played, I think we got 2 guys that were outside of that, young guys that are, right in the mix. So that's at least 9 guys going in the fall camp that you feel like could really help us out and play not just winning football, but like to think that's our tone setter is our offensive line. and, really being able to identify, what will they do really well and run with that. I know last year, I think we did that. We were athletic. So we got to more of an outside zone game, really effective. Like I mentioned before, we weren't maybe awesome on the pass side as far as just our experience, quite frankly. So we leaned on the run game more, and they ran with it. Now we got to be able to probably be a little bit more versatile this year, but that's the expectation that we can be.
Offensive linemen can be sometimes little weird birds. What can Coach Johnson expect out of that room of offensive linemen as far as characters?
Yeah, well, he's one of them too.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think he fits right in.
Good.
No, you got a unique personalities. The neat thing about that group, like last year, really only returning one starter. One other guy, Rush Reimer, had played a little bit at the tail end of 21, but Justice Perkins was our only starter, and they made it clear from the start that if one was getting interviewed, they were all getting interviewed. So we had all these interviews with one guy maybe getting asked the questions, but all these other big guys standing behind him like they were the bodyguards or something. So, when you have them linked together like that, that is so important. They know that there's competition. They know, hey, if rotating is best for the team at one position, that's what we're going to do. But a good group, and it's a mix now of kind of all ages still. It isn't a group where they're all seniors by any means. We'll have, sophomores, probably a couple freshmen eligibility wise in that mix, along with the juniors and seniors.
Yeah, Reimer and JT Reed also preseason all conference. There are changes coming to the defensive side, key losses at the linebacker position and in the secondary, but your defensive line, as you mentioned, going to match the offensive line in experience. What things do you want to see develop on the defensive side as camp opens up in preparation for that season opener?
Yeah, I think more quality depth. I think we had a really good starting outfit last year. We got to a deeper group at the end position, where I think over time we played, 5 guys at the 2 end positions. We probably never got there on the interior, and I think that really wore on Sebastian Valdez and Blake Schmidt. So, continuing to bring along that next wave of guys on the inside. Ideally we get to game 1 and we feel good about playing 10 guys. That doesn't mean we're playing, 10 guys equally, but maybe instead of a guy like Sebastian playing 80%, he's playing 65, 60, something like that. And you take off 10 plus plays over the course of a long season in the trenches, that allows you in December potentially to be every bit as much as you were, and then some that you were in September. And so just really trying to bolster that depth. I know those key playmakers, Valdez, Grebe, Schmidt, maybe in particular, they need to take their game up a notch. And then, those guys, that next wave, we need a couple other guys within that group to be all conference type of guys. And I think we have a couple candidates for that. So that still has to play out, but feel good about, again, returning an entire group of guys that played, and then you add in a couple more names in the mix.
Yeah, and by the way, Valdez and Grebe also preseason honors. On special teams, you lose your kicker. Blake Glessner transfers to UCLA, opening up that position. 2 players currently listed on the roster that I saw, correct me if I'm wrong, is freshman Miles Sandstead and redshirt freshman Casey Kautzman. Yeah, tell me about that position and any concern going in as far as those 2 young men.
Well, our specialist situation was, you feel pretty good about it as a coach. We had 3 sophomores between our kicker, punter, and our long snapper last year. And shortly after the regular season, found out that Blake Glessner was going to transfer. And then shortly thereafter in February, found out our punter, Bryce Layton, was going to graduate. He was just going to stay here and finish out and not play football anymore. So that led us more on a charge to find a punter. And we were really fortunate to come across Brendan Hall from SMU. Brendan's punted for the Mustangs. He kicked off both years he was there. And really in a short time here, we feel like we have a rare talent, a guy that could potentially do all 3.
Wow. Okay.
Kickoff, place kick, and punt. Now, how we finished spring was with Casey and Miles battling it out. Casey, left spring with that place kicking job, and that's primarily what we were after at that point because we didn't have a punter in spring. But Brendan's going to get a chance to really walk in and punt for us. I think that's very clear. In all likelihood, be the kickoff guy just based on what we've seen and what he's done at SMU, and then have a chance to compete for that place kicking job. So,
Right.
We haven't had a chance to talk about him a whole lot because no one's seen him in live action up here in Bozeman, but really excited about that. And then Tommy Sullivan, our long snapper, is a guy that no one knows his name because he's been that good for us in his 2 years. And he was the preseason all conference long snapper. I don't know how that was even determined, but he was that for us in our conference. So a real steady hand there, both the short and the deep snaps that Tommy brings.
Outstanding. Well, listen, schedule-wise, you have a non-conference battle against the defending champs and the team that knocked the Bobcats out of the season last year. Week 2 coming up in 2023 on the road, Brookings, South Dakota. As camps open, do you feel like that game is lingering in the mind of the coaches and the players that were there last year? And is that okay, or do you feel like it's just focus on what's immediately ahead?
Well, we got to focus what's on immediately ahead of us, and that's just day by day. I mean, it's right now a couple of days left of summer workouts, a couple of days off over the weekend, and then we'll start practice on the 3rd. We'll eventually shift gears to Utah Tech, our first opponent on September 2nd, and that's got to be our focus. Now, it'd be crazy to say that game hasn't been on everybody's mind in this program. You leave that field back in December, feeling like you didn't put your best foot forward. And there's maybe a sense of comfort's maybe the wrong word. You're playing the defending champs at their place, but at least a chance to there's going to be an opportunity for redemption, so to speak. And we have to take that step-by-step approach, and we have really all year to be able to go out there on the 9th and compete with them. And a big part of that is just that can't be our conversation right now.
Sure.
We have to look at fall camp and to win that first game. That's going to be our initial opponent that's in front of us. So it will be a really fun opportunity for us to go back over there. But we'll wait till game week to get too focused on that.
Sounds good. Hey, Big Sky Conference is thriving. A lot of changes in the conference as far as head coaches go, with the changing landscape of the FCS, and we've seen alliances for conferences and teams jumping back and forth. Just got to talk about what it's like to be in a stable conference that's not only just thriving, but bringing big time national attention to not only your program but the entire conference. And I think that Big Sky is kind of being looked at as that's how you do things, and that's how you bring good, positive attention to your programs. Just talk about being in a conference with that kind of stability in such a unsteady landscape over the last couple of years in the FCS.
Yeah, I can tell you I've been really pleased. My 2+ years, I had familiarity with the Big Sky, having been in this region in the Mountain West, playing a couple of the teams in my time at Wyoming, and then going back to my time at NDSU. Coaching the Missouri Valley, but again, overlapping and playing Big Sky teams here and there. So yeah, the way our conference approaches athletics across the board is very impressive. And then how we look at football and how many schools look at football. It's a competitive league because a lot of schools within our conference are taking that same approach that they want to compete at the national level, and that's certainly the charge from our commissioner, is that getting back on top of the FCS is his priority. So the way they've promoted it, the way they really pushed for game day for that matter, I think that speaks volumes. It was a lot about, being here, highlighting the rivalry, but it was a big effort by our conference to do everything they could. And I don't really know what that means, but they put a lot of effort into it. I know that. And we just got done with our Big Sky kickoff to have really a 3-day event. is very impressive. A good media showing, Hall of Fame banquet the first night, a lot of activities for our student athletes that go. So really feel like our conference is doing everything they can to promote our conference, make the experience for our student athletes the best, and really drive for a championship. And I think there's a real alignment amongst the schools in the league, and you just don't see that necessarily across the country anywhere.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Well, one final question. You mentioned you've got camp starting next week. I know you took the team to Yellowstone. What does Brent Vigen do to kind of say, okay, I'm about to go all in, and there's not going to be many hours of time off? Have you done anything in this summer leading up to the camps that was just for you, family, or anything just to kind of get you mentally prepared for what's ahead?
Yeah, I have 3 boys, so and 2 of them are still school age. Our oldest is here with us at Montana State. So my junior to be played a bunch of AAU, so I don't think those trips necessarily count as. But it's fun. It's fun to follow him, and then our youngest, who's going to be a 7th grader, played baseball all the way up until this past weekend. So following them around, my wife and I, our parents both have cabins, lake cabins back in Minnesota. So we got there for like a long weekend over the 4th. We intend on going to Glacier this weekend. Obviously, Yellowstone's real close, so we can get there pretty easily. Glacier is a little bit more of an effort. So we haven't been there yet in our time in Montana. So looking forward to a long weekend, up in Glacier. To have Yellowstone and Glacier, 2 of the most spectacular places in the world, in our backyard, is something we need to be able to take advantage of.
Well, if you want to, you got the Rocky Mountains right there. If you're going to take the team on a real trip, take them to like Vegas or something. To get to experience some concrete or something. No, just teasing. Listen, hey, we are excited about what's going on in Montana State. I'm excited that this team is bringing back so many exciting, fun players that FCS fans are going to get a chance to see and latch on to and celebrate. But I really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's a busy time of year for you guys, and I really appreciate Bill Lamberty for setting this up. But thank you so much for the time, and I really do appreciate it. Best of luck as camps open and the season is right ahead.
Yeah, appreciate your interest and your coverage, and hey, go Cats.
Absolutely. All right, that is Brent Vigen of Montana State. Thanks so much, Coach. We will talk to you soon.